So you just shipped your Next.js application. It looks smooth, feels fast until you open Lighthouse and your performance score makes you cry. What went wrong? 9 times out of 10, it's your images. Images are the most overlooked part of web development. They slow down load times, trigger layout shifts, and tank the user experience. But don't worry, in this video I will give you the ultimate guide to image optimization in Next.js. We will start with the native image tag and why CLS happens, and then we will dive into the image component, placeholders, lazy loading, priority, quality control, and everything you might need. And of course, I will also show you how to transform your images on the fly by, for example, resizing, cropping, adding a blur, autofocusing on objects, and much more. And finally, I will even show you how to upload media the right way efficiently using Presigned URLs. So, without any further ado, let's go! Alright, so let's start with example number 1, the OG, the HTML image tag. So in a second I will click on this card and this will redirect me to the page where I render my images. And I want you to precisely look at your screen because you will see something interesting, a little flash, a little shift. So I will now click on the card, bam, and did you see this shift, this little flash? If I do a hard refresh, I don't see it anymore. This is kinda weird. So let me open my inspector. I will go to the network tab, and if I disable my cache and do a hard refresh, did you just see that? There was this flash again. So look at this content at the bottom. If I do a hard refresh, it first of all shows up right here, and then it shifts to the bottom once the image loads. So now you might ask me, hey Jan, what's the problem? Why does the content shift? This is not great user experience. It's kinda annoying, to be quite honest with you. And yes, I agree with you. So what you see here is called Cumulative Layout Shift, or in short, CLS. So CLS is an important user-centric metric for measuring visual stability because it helps quantify how often users experience unexpected layout shifts. A low CLS, so layout shift, helps ensure that the page is delightful for all users. So how exactly does a bad CLS look like? So this currently is the loading state, and let's imagine that the red thing is the card. So if we go back, our application or my website has this card, and then in the card I render the image. And in this case the red thing is my card. So once the application now loads, once the website now loads, I will get the image. So as you see here, the image is now loaded, for example this one, and the layout, the content automatically shifts. It's like very weird. So let's continue viewing the video, and then here on the bottom left corner something else pops in. So the whole layout, the whole page shifts, which is very annoying. So now you might say, okay Jan, this makes sense. CLS is not good. We don't want our layout to shift, but how would good CLS look like? In other words, how would a page look like if the layout or the content would not shift? So here let's look at this example. In this case, let's imagine that this is an image, this is an image, and this is an image. And as you see here, this is the initial loading state, and we instantly have like blank spots. If I now play the video, we get our image here, and then we get our image also on the bottom left corner. And there's no shift. The content stays where it was. And that's because we now leave like empty gaps. We tell HTML, hey, the image probably takes a second or two to load. Let's right here create like an empty spot so that our image gets loaded into this spot. With that, the content will not shift, which is better for the user experience in general. So now you might say, okay Jan, this makes sense. So CLS is an important topic. We don't want our content to shift. So how can we implement it in this application? Good question. So let's first of all look at the code base because I did not show it to you yet. So first of all, inside of here I get 4 images, and the images are taken from Unsplash, and I mean look at them, they are beautiful. And then I have my export default function, and inside of here I render 4 cards, and in each card I render an image tag with the source, so it corresponds to this constant, and then I have an alt for accessibility because accessibility is very important. And let me quickly show you my page. So as mentioned, I have 4 images. This is the first image, this is the second image, this is the third one, and this is the fourth one. And what we want to now do is optimize our image to not get this annoying content shift. So let's go back. I will scroll to my second card, and how can we optimize our image? How can we add these blank spots? Well, we can add 2 properties, and this is the width and height. In this case, the width will be 1200 and the height will be 800. So now you might ask me, okay, Jan, width and height, why do we use them and what do they do? Good question. So these properties pretty much reserve a spot in our layout. So in this case, we tell our card, hey card, in a second an image will load with a height of about 800 pixels and a width of about 1200 pixels. Please give it some space. This means don't shift. Let's already append or adjust the height of the card so that there's 0 shift. And that's what we did right here. And there is also a quite common misconception around the width and height properties. A lot of people think that they also change the image quality or the image size or something like that. This is not true. These 2 properties are only there to reserve a place in our UI. They don't adjust the size, they don't adjust the image, nothing like that. We still get the original image which is defined at the top. But using the width and height, we only tell the image pretty much, or you could say the card, that hey, we will have an image with about this size in a second, reserve the space, don't shift. Because without a width and height, the card will think that the image has a size of 0. And that's why the card at the start had like this much space, 0. But now, since we tell the card, hey, the image has a height of 800 pixels, it instantly knows that there will be content inside of here, and it adjusts the card accordingly, which means we don't get any layout shift anymore. And if there is layout shift, then it's very minimal. And of course, let's test it out. I disabled my cache, and if I now do a hard refresh, there is no shift anymore. I mean, look at this. There is no shift. The card has the correct height. My content at the bottom stays where it should stay, and everything works perfectly. Let's now continue with the next optimization. So as mentioned, I have 4 cards in total, or 4 images. And this itself is fine. This is not a problem. If I do a hard refresh, everything loads, everything is quite fast. But let's imagine you would have, let's say, 5,000 images on this one page. Quite a lot. What would happen? Well, here's the thing. If I open my inspector and go to the network and do a hard refresh, you will see here that all of my images instantly load. Like, there is no loading period, or I don't have to scroll to the bottom or anything like that. They instantly load. And if I would now have, for example, 5,000 images, these 5,000 images would also load instantly. Because here's the thing, if I go to this page, so if I navigate from my index page to this example 1 route, I'm not at the bottom, right? So I don't see this image instantly. What I see instantly is the first image, and that's what I want to load instantly. But it does not really make sense to load images which are at the bottom, because maybe I won't even scroll to the bottom. This is not good. This will tank your website performance. So what's the solution? Well, the solution is quite simple. We can add a property which is called loading, and this will be equal to lazy. What does this mean? Well, now if I do a hard refresh, it will only load the images which are in the viewport or next to the viewport. So in this case, these 4 images are quite near to my viewport, and the viewport is just what I see. In this case, this is my viewport, and these images are all very close to my viewport. But for example, example, if I would have 100 images, then the 50th image wouldn't be close to my viewport anymore. This means with this lazy mode, we will only load the images close to the viewport, and then once the user starts scrolling to the bottom, all of the images will load in once they are close to the viewport. This is a very important optimization because I see a lot of websites which load their images eagerly, this means instantly, which creates a lot of load because not all users will scroll to the bottom to see all images. Let's now continue with the next optimization, and this deals with responsiveness. So here's the thing, this image is currently, you could say, optimized for a desktop screen, for a big monitor. But here's the thing, not every user of your website will be visiting using his computer. Many visitors will use their mobile phones. So if I make this website a bit smaller, so the screen in general a bit smaller, then you will see here that the images are now way smaller. What does this mean? Well, this means we don't need to load the whole image, the big image. We can actually load a smaller image with a smaller width, a smaller height, with that automatically a smaller size, maybe even a smaller or worse image quality, because on a such small screen, you don't really see every pixel. I don't need 4K quality. Maybe full HD is fine enough. But how can we create a responsive image? Good question. Well, thankfully, it's way simpler than you might think. To make this image responsive, we want to create a source set. That's how you call it. So at the top, I defined a few new constants. First of all, this is my base constant. This is like the image in its full width and height, full resolution, in other words. And here I have a few more constants, but these restrict the width. What do I mean by that? For example, image 480. This image has now been updated using these URL params, and here I say, hey, I want to get this image but with a width of 480 pixels, 768 pixels, 1280 pixels, and then my last source set size is 1920 pixels. So for example, this image, the last one, is perfect for my monitor because my monitor has a width of 1920 pixels, and 480 pixels for the width is perfect for my phone. So now we have a source set, so pretty much one image with different dimensions, with different widths, and with that also different image sizes. We can use these images, or I guess it's still one image, but let's call them multiple images. Inside of here in the image, we can now get the source set property, and we can add all of our images inside of here. So image for 480, and then you want to append the number again. So 480 width, then image for 768 with a width of 768 pixels, and so on and so on. And now you might ask me, okay, Jan, so we now have a source set. This means we have a set of multiple images, but how do they help us to make our image responsive? Well, it's quite simple. The browser is actually quite smart. It will now see, I have multiple images with different sizes. This means, for example, this image works perfectly for a mobile device, and this image works perfectly for a desktop device. So hey, if we are on a mobile device, instead of using this source, let's use this one. And if we are on a desktop device, then let's use this one. So these pixels don't have to be perfect. At the end of the day, the browser will choose the image which has pretty much the best size in regards to the screen real estate itself. And then there's one more property which you want to add, and that's the sizes property. And this is very important for performance. So inside of here, I have this maximum width, 640 pixels, and I tell the image pretty much, hey, if I'm on a small screen, if the width is only 600 pixels, then the image should take the whole width, 100 viewport width. And if the device is a bit bigger, then only 90 viewport width. And otherwise, if it's even bigger than 1024, then let's limit it at 1024 pixels in terms of width. And if I open my inspector and inspect the element, then you will see that we have way more content. We have our source, the alt, import the source set, we have our sizes, and our image with that is now finally optimized for both a desktop screen but also a mobile screen, and I guess everything that is in between these two screen types. But here's the thing, I know exactly what you want to say right now. Hey Jan, this makes sense. Yes, we want to have responsive images. Yes, it's better for performance. But to be honest with you, defining the source set is super annoying. Having to go into the image, adapt the width, then again upload it, then use it inside of here, adding all of the data. And this is only for one image. Imagine having thousands of images and all of them having to have different source sets. So this means different sizes. At some point, this would just be not feasible anymore and kinda annoying, to be quite honest with you. So is there any solution which maybe abstracts this source set generation for us and maybe offers a few other optimizations? Well, thankfully there is. Since this is a Next.js application, I actually have access to the image component. So if you go to the documentation, you will find a section called Image Optimization. And here you will see that Next.js offers a component called Image. And this image component extends the HTML image element to provide a lot of features, including size optimization. This means it will pretty much take your original image and it will serve it with correctly sized images. It will define a source set and it will also convert the image into a modern type, like for example WebP or AVIF. Also, it offers visual stability. It prevents layout shifts, CLS, automatically when images are loading. It offers faster page loads because it only loads images when they enter the viewport using native browser lazy loading with optional blur up placeholders. And in a second we will also implement or add placeholders to our images. And it offers asset flexibility. This means resizing images on demand, even images which are stored on remote servers. Now right here, this probably currently sounds like a dream. Wow, this is so cool. But actually the image component also brings a huge problem with itself. But we will come to that a bit later on. Let's first of all implement the image component and let's see why it's so cool and special. So if I go back to my application, I have an example to route, and as you see here, I instantly get an error. Why do I get an error? Good question. The answer is super simple. Right here in my route, I defined my base image, and it's equal to this URL. So here's the thing. The Next.js image component optimizes your images. It updates the format. So for example, from JPEG to WebP or something like that. It resizes your images. It creates a source set. This has a resource cost. This means your server has to do all of the work. And this, at the end of the day, costs resources and money. What does this mean? Well, let's say here, John is a malicious user. He sees your website and sees, oh my god, this user optimizes images for free. He will say, cool, let me use his service. I won't pay anything. I will get great images. Let's do that. We can tell Next.js, hey, this domain is safe. This domain is my domain. You can optimize these images. But if a different URL, if a different domain is provided, then don't optimize the images, because this probably means that there is a malicious user. I can open my next.config file. Inside of here, I want to get the images property. Inside of here, I want to get remote patterns. This is an array. And then inside of here, I can define all of the domains, or in other words, the URLs. So for the protocol, this will be HTTPS. And please make sure that your domain is always using HTTPS, because HTTP is not safe. And then for the host name, I can just go back and copy it from here. So ik.imagekit.io. I will copy this, go back, and I will paste it right here for the host name. And that's already it. If I go back and do a hard refresh, Next.js will know, hey, this ImageKit domain is safe to use. We can optimize these images. And you might also ask me, why do we now use the ImageKit domain instead of Unsplash? Well, the reason is quite simple. I don't own Unsplash. If, for example, Unsplash decides tomorrow to block me, well, then I can't do anything. anything. This is not my website, this is not my infrastructure, I don't control anything, I can't upload anything inside of here, so this is not a good solution, especially for a production use case. And ImageKit is actually the complete opposite because it's one platform to optimize, transform, store, manage, and deliver visuals so that we developers can ship faster. But what exactly is ImageKit and what does it do? Well, ImageKit is a real-time media processing product that helps you optimize, stream, and transform images and videos for the web. It comes integrated with its own storage, but you can also use your own infrastructure. This means S3, R2, or maybe GCP if you like to use Google. ImageKit can also automatically compress and convert images and videos to suitable formats for every device. It offers more than 50 URL-based transformations for your images and videos, from simple resize and crop to more advanced features like AI-based crop and watermarking. They also offer SDKs for popular frameworks, but in this video we will use the Next.js SDK since we are Next.js developers. And you know what the best thing is? They offer a very generous forever free plan which you can use for your production websites. It comes with all of the features which you would expect from a paid plan. So since you now know what ImageKit is, I can go into my dashboard, and inside of here you will see that I already uploaded my images. So I uploaded this image, this beautiful image, and this image. So I have now a few images. So in this case I can just hover over this URL symbol. I want to copy the original URL and paste it inside of here. So now we have our image, and the nice thing is this image lives on a CDN. So this is not like S3, just object storage. No, this image is distributed globally on a CDN, which means whenever we request this image, we get a response almost instantly. But okay, since we now have our own storage solution set up, we can also use it with the Next.js image component. So how do you use the image component? Well, it's quite simple. We want to import image from Next/image. We want to pass our source. In this case, this is the one which I defined at the top using ImageKit. I added an alt for accessibility, and actually if I delete the alt, I get a warning, and that's because the alt is quite important for accessibility and Next.js wants you to add one. And then I have a class name. But if I go back, I instantly get an error. Why is that? Well, that's because Next.js expects a width and height. And I think you know why we need these two properties, but in case you forgot, it's quite simple. These values are used to determine the image ratio and to prevent CLS while your image is loading. So as you see here, Next.js is prioritizing user experience, and that's a very good default. So now we see our image here. This is the example to route. Our image looks good. There is no big difference. That's what you might say. But let's dig deeper. Let's open the inspector. I will open the network tab, and if I do a hard refresh, I will get my images here. But now let's look at two specific things: the type and the size. So the type is WebP, and the size is 424 kilobytes. Okay, you might say, that's nothing groundbreaking. What do you want to show me, Jan? Well, let's look at our example 1 page. Here our image had a type of AVIF and the size was 2000 kilobytes. So Next.js, the image component, converted the image from AVIF to WebP, and it also made it smaller, the image smaller. Instead of 2000 something kilobytes, it's now only 400 kilobytes. And let's also look at the image itself. So if you inspect the image, you will see something quite interesting. Look at the source. So right here you will find the source, and the source is not ImageKit, the source is _next. Why do we see here _next? Well, it's quite simple. As mentioned, the image component optimizes your images on the server. This means it gets the image from ImageKit, it then takes the image, puts it pretty much through our server, optimizes it again, even though ImageKit already optimized it, and then it returns it here. And that's why we don't see imagekit.io, but instead _next. But now you might say, who cares? I mean, who cares if the URL is ImageKit or if it's _Vercel? The result is the same. We get an optimized image. Sure, ImageKit already optimized the image. We pretty much optimized the image 2 times. But hey, we get a nice result, so why should I care? Well, I'm sorry to say, but image optimization provided by Next.js is actually not free. So once you deploy your application to Vercel, you will have to pay for image optimization. So you have a free tier or with 5,000 images included per month, but once you overstep this limit, once you need to optimize more images, well then, I'm sorry, you will have to start paying for image optimization. And this does not make any sense. If ImageKit already optimizes our images, then there's no need for us to optimize them again using the image component. We can just use ImageKit and that's it. So how can we tell Next.js, hey, we already use ImageKit, they optimize everything for us, please don't optimize the images again. This will be cheaper for us and the result will actually be even better because there will be no second runtime optimization. Well, thankfully, it's very simple to implement. So if you go to Google and search for ImageKit Next.js image optimization, then you will find this blog article. And here they say to integrate ImageKit with Next.js, you will need to use the features of the custom loader. In Next.js, a loader function creates image URLs for different sizes, helping in automatic source set generation for optimal viewport display. Next.js's default loader uses its own image optimization API to serve optimized images. But if you are using a CDN or, for example, a custom image server like ImageKit, you will need to write your own loader, your own custom loader. And that's what I did. So if I scroll to the top, then you will find this ImageKit loader. This is a function which accepts 3 params, the source, width, and quality. I can update my image, I can add a loader, and this loader will be equal to my ImageKit loader function, which I defined at the top. Then for the source, instead of passing the full image URL, I can just pass the image ID, the image identifier, and if I now go back and do a hard refresh, I get an error. What's the problem? Well, it's quite simple. When you use a custom loader, you have to mark the component, or in other words the page, with the use client directive. And later on I will show you something that simplifies everything so that you don't have to define this custom image loader, so that you don't have to define the use client directive, a solution which does everything for you. But for now, if we again go back, we will see our image here. And now let's test out if we get the actual ImageKit URL. If I inspect the element and go to my image, then you will see here for the source, instead of having _next, I get my ImageKit domain URL itself. And here's another thing, the image component itself is just a standard image tag, but it generates the source set automatically. So as you see here, we have our source set with multiple images and then our actual source itself. So that's a great benefit of using the image component itself. And here's actually something quite interesting. Since we created our custom loader at the top, which accepts the width, ImageKit updates the URL. So as you see here for the source set, we now have our domain, our standard URL, but then at the end we have this question mark tr equals to width 1200. So ImageKit now on the fly transforms, resizes the image to this specific width. It won't load the whole image with a width of, let's say, 4000 or something like that, but it will resize it on the fly. Now I want to continue with example number 2. So let's imagine the following. Currently this image does not have any width and height, and this image should have the same height and width as the container itself. So this image is rendered in my card, and this card has a height 64 and a width of full. Now here's the thing, I know what the height is because height is 64, I can just say 256 pixels, but the width is not really something I can calculate, because on a small screen the image will be smaller, on a big screen the width will be bigger. Therefore, I would kinda want this image to just fill the container automatically. The image should pretty much be responsive. So how can we implement something like that without adding width and height properties? Well, it's actually quite simple. You can add a property which is called fill, and this will fill the container. The important thing is that the container should have a position of relative. And as you see here, the image loads fine. We did not add any width or height property. Nevertheless, the image renders as wanted. It still looks a bit weird, so we can update the class name. This will be object cover, and if we again go back, then this finally looks as expected. One more thing which I would recommend doing here is actually adding a custom sizes property. Next.js, or the image component itself, will generate a source set, but this source set will not have the best results. If you add your own custom sizes property, in this case where you use the fill property, you will get a better result. So as the next step, I want to look at the quality prop provided by the image component. So using the quality property, you can adjust the quality of the image on the fly using ImageKit, because ImageKit will then dynamically, at runtime pretty much when the image is loaded, it will automatically convert it into your specified quality spec. So let me show it to you guys. For the first image, let's say for the quality it should be 90%, and for the second image we can say for the quality that this will be 5, like really bad quality. And if we now go back and if I do a hard refresh, do you see a difference? I mean, let me zoom in a bit. This looks quite good, and let's go to this one. Yeah, here you should already see something. I can open it in a new tab. So this is the new image with the quality 5, and I'm not sure if you see it, but this is a bit distorted. The quality isn't as good anymore. If I open the first image with the quality 90%, then you will see here that it's quite good. So it's almost like full quality, but this here has a bit of distortion. It's not big, so you won't really see it. 5% is still fine enough in this case, but in general the quality prop is quite powerful because you can adjust it on the fly dynamically. You don't always need full quality images. Sometimes you need only an image with 5% quality or 50% quality. And let me also show you how it works with ImageKit. So if you look at the URL specifically, then you will see here, this is first of all the ImageKit domain, then the ID of our image itself, and then at the end we have this question mark TR. So for the width, the image has a width of 3840 pixels, and then we have this Q-5. This means quality 5. I can adjust the quality dynamically. I could now say 90 or 80 for example, and it will automatically adjust the quality. And as you see here, I don't see this distortion anymore, so it automatically converted it into a better quality itself. And also one thing which I want to mention is that the default image optimization quality for ImageKit is 80. So if you don't configure the quality prop, it will always automatically configure your image to 80% quality. This is quite a good default. Nevertheless, you can always update it to 75 or 90. 75 is, for example, a good default that I use, but 80 is also fine enough. As the next step, I want to look at the priority property. So here's the thing. If I open my inspector, and to be specific, the network tab, and if I do a hard refresh, please look at my network requests. First of all, I get the HTML, then the font, then the CSS, then the JS, and only after all of this stuff has been loaded, I get my images. Now this could be fine for you, but in some cases you want to load an image with a priority. So let me go back and I will add the priority tag for this image. So priority, and that's it. This will be automatically set to true. And if I again go back and open my network and do a hard refresh, then look at my network requests. I get my HTML, I get my font, my CSS, and then I instantly get this image where I set this priority property. So this priority property allows you to load an image with a priority. It makes a lot of sense to use this tag whenever you have like an hero image, or for example, when you have a blog article, in most cases you probably have a title, then a description, and then a big image. In this case, it would make a lot of sense to use the priority tag, but you shouldn't use it always or everywhere. Like for example, right now I use the priority tag for this image, the fourth image, to which you first of all have to scroll. It does not make any sense to use priority here. If I would look at this page, then it would only make sense to use priority inside of here, so for the first image. But never use it down below and never use it for all images. Use it for one main image, or if you have multiple small main images, then use it there. But they should be in viewport, and only then it makes sense to load your images with a priority. As the next step, I want to show you how you can use a placeholder to show something while the image is loading. So here's the thing, if I open my network and if I make my network very slow, so let's say slow 4G, and if I do a hard refresh, you will see here that, well, I get an empty box, so pretty much my card with this background color, and that's it. I don't get any feedback, I don't really see that there's an image, and only now something starts to load. This isn't great user experience. I want to show like a fallback, something which pretty much shows the user, hey, the image is loading, it will be there in a second or 10 seconds or 20 seconds, who knows, but I want to give the user feedback. So how can I do that? Well, thankfully the image component natively supports image placeholders. So here I can get a property which is called placeholder, and I get two options, either blur or empty. Empty would mean that we just have no placeholder. That's what we had a second ago. But if I select blur, then this means that we will use a blurred version of the image as a placeholder. But here's the thing, if I save this and again go back, and as you see here, we get an error. What's the problem? Well, it's quite simple. Our image is hosted on ImageKit. It's a remote URL, it's a remote server in that sense. If our image would be stored in our public folder, then it would automatically generate a blur data URL for us. The blur data URL is what will be used for the placeholder itself. It's like a string which pretty much then encodes into an image. Now here's the thing, since this is a remote URL, we have to provide our own blur data URL. And there are two things that you can do. Option A is that you take your image and then you pretty much convert it into a smaller image, then you pixelate it, you blur it, and then you use it for your blur data URL. And I will show you that option a bit later on. But an easier solution would be to, for example, go to this website png-pixel.com, and in this case I will just use this green background color. It looks quite good. And as a next step, I will copy this source, so data, image, PNG, and so on and so on. So this is a base 64 URL. I will paste it inside of here for the blur data URL. And if I again go back and make my network slower and do a hard refresh, I should get the placeholder. And that's what you see here. This is my green placeholder. And once I get my image, it will automatically load in. So let's wait for it. And as you see here, it loads from the top to the bottom, and my placeholder will then go away once the image is fully loaded into view. So as you see here, my image has finally loaded and the placeholder has now vanished. But now you might say, hey Jan, this is cool and everything, but is there any better solution? Is there any solution where I don't have to define the custom loader, where I don't have to create my own blur data URL? Because here's the thing, currently we just use a dummy image. But in most cases you want to use a scaled down version of your own image so that it looks a bit better. But in this case it's not very easy to implement. So is there any better solution? Well, thankfully there is. So here's the thing, ImageKit provides its own Next.js SDK, and it's used for real-time image and video resizing, automatic optimization, and file uploading in Next.js using ImageKit. So what we can do is first of all install ImageKit, the SDK itself. And what's special about this SDK? Well, it's quite simple. It exports an image component. It's like a drop-in replacement for the native image component, but this specific component automatically handles the URL generation and transformation logic. This means we don't have to create this loader anymore, we don't have to add the loader inside of here, and we don't have to mark our whole file with the use client directive. So let me show it to you. I'm now in my example 3 route, and inside of here I imported 2 things. First of all, the image component, but I imported srcImage so that it's easier to understand that this is not the native image component, but rather the ImageKit image component. And I also import the ImageKit provider. And what even is the ImageKit provider? Well, the ImageKit provider is used to set defaults for the URL endpoint and transformation position. So it's just a nice helper so that you don't have to redefine everything in each image itself. So in this case, I set up my ImageKit provider and I added my URL endpoint. The URL endpoint is just my base URL. This means imagekit.io/ the ID of my account. And that's already it. In the ImageKit provider, I use the IK-image. Again, this is just the image component itself with a few extra features. Inside of here, I pass my source. This is the ID of my photo, and that's already it. Of course, you have to add the width and height. And if I go back to my example 3 route, you will see that everything works as expected. I get all of my images. I did not define any custom loader, nothing like that. And also, this here does not have to be a client component. In theory, this can be a server component and everything will still work. The image component provided by ImageKit adds the use client directive automatically for this image itself. And that's why we don't have to add the use client directive at the top. So as the next step, I want to show you how you can lazy load your image with a real placeholder. Because a second ago, I showed you how to add a placeholder, but this was a static placeholder. It was not dynamic. It was not the real image. It was just a green background. But in this case, I want to show a real placeholder, something which is derived from my real image. So if we go back to the documentation, you will find this section, lazy loading with placeholder. And here you will see that they mention 2 options on how you can create a placeholder. Option number 1 is to use the blur data URL, but this requires you to generate a base64 encoded placeholder. But another option is that you can generate the placeholder image URL using ImageKit's build source utility function and set it as a background image in the style prop. So if you scroll a bit to the bottom, then you will find this code example, and you know what? Let's copy the code example and let's test it out. In this case, we have to use the useState hook to show the placeholder, so to know if the placeholder should be shown or not. That's why we have to mark this file with the use client directive. And if I go back and do a hard refresh, nothing changes. But if we slow down the network and if I do a hard refresh, you should see a nice placeholder. So let's see, our placeholder is being generated. Now we see our placeholder here, and in a second our image will start loading in. And that's exactly what you see here. So if we look at the code, here we have a transformations array, and as you see here, we set the quality to 10% and the blur to 90%. This means it's almost completely blurred, because the maximum is 100, but 90 is almost the maximum. We also added a background size and background repeat for the placeholder, and as you see here, everything works beautifully. So as the next step, I want to look at chained transformations. So here's the thing, what was the core promise of ImageKit? One platform to optimize, transform, store, manage and deliver visuals. And now I want to specifically look at the transformation part of ImageKit. Now here's the thing, we have been optimizing or transforming our images already the whole time. So if I go to the example 2 route, we had this quality example and we updated our image with the quality preset. Here we said the quality should be 5% and here we said it should be, I think, 90%. Now, if we look at the source itself, I will just copy it and open it in a new tab. And if you now specifically look at the URL, then you will see that we changed two transformations. First of all, we adjusted the width, and then we have a comma Q-5, quality 5. So these were two transformations, and now we can chain even more transformations. So let's again go to the documentation, because the documentation is your best friend. And you will find a section height and width transformation. And here you will already see how you can transform images with ImageKit and the image component. Because as you see, it's super simple. You want to use the transformation property, so let's test it out. I have my image, as mentioned. We can get the transformation property. Inside of here, let's open an array and let's create an object. So let's start with the width. The width will be 1200. For the height, this will be 800. Then we can add a focus. In this case, auto makes the most sense. We can also add a crop, and the crop will be equal to at least. Then we can also add a rotation, and we can say 50 degrees. And how about we also add a blur? Why not? Let's say 10%. And is there anything else I want to add? Maybe we can add a grayscale. So a grayscale is like this gray overlay. So let's say grayscale will be equal to true. Oh my god, this is our image. It's completely transformed. We changed the rotation. We added the grayscale option. We added a blur. We can also inspect the URL itself. So I will just copy this source. And now let's specifically again look at the URL. This is the ImageKit domain. This is the ID. And then we have the question mark TR, so transformation. And then for the width, 1200. For the height, 800. For the focus, auto. For the crop, at least. For the rotation, 50 degrees. Then we have BL. This is for the blur, 10. And we have our grayscale. So this worked very nicely. But what do all of these properties mean? I mean, most of them make sense, but where can you find out more about all of the offered properties? Well, again, the documentation is your best friend. But now instead of going to the Next.js documentation, we can scroll to the bottom. Here you will find the section transform and adapt. And we want to transform images, not videos. And here you will find all of the options. Resize and crop. That's what we did. We added a width and a height. Then, for example, we added this crop at least. What does that mean? Well, here you will see minimum size cropping strategy. This strategy is similar to the max size cropping strategy, with the only difference being that unlike the max size strategy, the image is equal to or larger than the requested dimensions. One of the dimensions will be exactly the same as what is requested, while the other dimension will be equal to or larger than what is requested. So for example, this could be an original image, and if you now use the minimum size cropping strategy, then this is how your image will look like. So this is quite interesting, and again, the documentation is your best friend. All of the individual properties are explained here, what they do, and also how you can add them. Now in this case, since we use the Next.js SDK, we get TypeScript types. But in theory, you can also transform your image using raw commands. So here we can get the raw property, and in theory I can just copy these properties. So for example, c-maintain_ratio. So I don't have to use the Next.js SDK, but it makes our lives a bit easier because it gives us TypeScript types, and we all love TypeScript types. As a next step, I want to show you how you can overlay text over an image. So this is our image, and you know what? On the top left corner, I want to render a subscribe button, because that's what you should do. So let's go to the documentation. So this now deals with overlays. So let's click on add overlay. So here they say ImageKit enables you to creatively enhance your images by adding overlays such as images, text, or solid color blocks using layers. As mentioned, in this case, I want to add text. So let me show it to you. Let's go back. Let's go to this image. I want to get the transformation property, we can open an array inside of here and then an object. So what do we have to do inside of here? Well, first of all, we can copy a few transformations from the image above, like the width, height, and focus. And let's also copy the crop. Why not? I can paste all of these transformations inside of here, and then I can open another object because this will now be for our overlay. So if you go to the Next.js specific documentation for the SDK, then you will find a section on how to overlay an image, like a logo, for example. But in this case, we want to overlay text. So how can we do that? Well, inside of here, we can first of all get the overlay property. Inside of the overlay, we can get our type. Now, as mentioned, we can overlay many things, but in this case, we want to overlay text. Then for the text itself, I will just say subscribe now. And for the position, we want to add our X and Y coordinates. So in this case, X will be 12 and then also Y will be 12. This means we will overlay the text on the top left corner. If we now go back and if I zoom in, you will see on the top left corner, subscribe now, but you don't really see it very well. That's because it's quite small. So let's transform the text even further. Inside of the overlay, I can get my transformation property. This is an array and we can open an object inside of here. I want to adapt the font size. This will be 40 pixels. I want to add a background. This will be red. Then for the font color, this will be white. For the alpha, this will be 6 and padding will be 12. Let's again go back. I will do a hard refresh and oh my god, it says subscribe now. This looks so cool. So this works beautifully. And again, there are a lot of options. Check the documentation. From my experience, it's best to start with the Next.js documentation itself. So for the Next.js SDK. But once you need more, you could say custom solutions, you can look at the general documentation for images and videos. And here you will find all transformation options. Resize and crop, overlays, AI transformations. I will show you AI transformations in a second, effects and enhancements, and much more. This is very powerful. As a next step, I want to show you object-aware cropping, which is powered by AI. Wow. So if you go to the documentation, then you will find this section, AI transformations. This is currently in beta, but it works very nicely and I tested it thoroughly. So here they have a section, object-aware cropping. So we can also crop out a particular object of interest out of multiple different objects in an image. So in this case, we have two identical images and we have a dog and a cat. So on the left side, I want to only see the dog. And on the right side, I want to only see the cat. So the focus here should be the cat and here the focus should be the dog. And thankfully, it's very easy to implement. Let's again go back, let's scroll to the bottom, and in this case for the transformation I will do it the raw way. So what do I want to crop? Well, I want to crop the cat. This means I can say here FO-cat because this is a cat. And let's do the same thing for the dog. I can just paste my transformation inside of here, but I don't want to crop the cat, but instead the dog. And if I go back and do a hard refresh, this is the dog and this is the cat. ImageKit was able to crop into the specific object without me having to add any position details or anything like that. I just said, hey, crop into the dog. I'm not sure if you know what a dog is, but find it yourself. And here, crop into the cat. I did not specify where the cat is, but just find it and crop into it. And as you see, it worked beautifully. And the nice thing is, object-aware cropping is completely included in the free plan, so you can test it out as much as you want. ImageKit has a lot of AI features, like for example background removal, or you can change the background if you want to. All of this is done on the fly, so you don't have to configure anything in the dashboard or anything like that. You just add all of the specific transformations right here in the transformation array, and then that's it. ImageKit will do everything for you using AI, but the standard transformations are also super powerful. And now there's one more thing that I want to show you guys, and that's file uploads. Because here's the thing. Right now, all of my files have been uploaded through the server, so my images. I went to the dashboard, I went to the media library, and I added my images. This is fine for admins like myself. I'm the admin, I can open the dashboard. But what is if I want to allow my customers, my users, to upload files? Well, I don't want to give them access to this ImageKit dashboard. This is my dashboard, it's for admins. This means I want to allow my clients to upload files, images specifically, on my website. And thankfully, ImageKit makes it very easy to upload files. Now, here's my question to you. How do you upload files? You might say, hey Jan, it's quite simple. We have our client, this is like your user, and this user makes a request to the server to upload a file. The server will then make a request to ImageKit and say, hey ImageKit, I have this file, let's upload it. And then ImageKit will just pretty much return the uploaded URL to the client. So you might say, this is how you upload files. No, this is a huge mistake. Why is this a mistake? Here's the thing, Vercel, so once you deploy your application to Vercel, Vercel will have a payload size, a maximum payload size, and this is 4.5 megabytes. So if your image is 10 megabytes or 20 megabytes big, well then good luck. There is nothing that you can do. This is problem number one. The second problem is, well, you consume a lot of bandwidth. Everything has to go through your server. This is not good. It puts a lot of load on your server and you have to pay more than you should. So what's an alternative? Well, the alternative is quite simple. We want to upload on the client side. But now you might say, hey Jan, the client side is not safe. It's insecure. Yes, that's right. And that's why we want to use something that you call a presigned URL. The client will make a request to the server. The server will make a request to ImageKit. And instead of now uploading the file here, we will instead ask ImageKit to generate a presigned URL, pretty much like an URL that works for one upload request. ImageKit will return this URL to the client itself, and the client will then upload the file, the image, using this URL on the client side. With that, we make sure that everything is still safe, but we don't do everything through our server, so we don't consume any unnecessary bandwidth, CPU usage, or anything like that. This is the best solution in my opinion, and not only in my opinion, it's factually the best solution for every use case. You want to get a presigned URL and then upload the file on the client side. So let's head over to the documentation, and here they have a section called uploading files, and they say here that the Next.js SDK exports a utility function .upload, which enables you to upload files to ImageKit. This upload function leverages the upload version 1 API, accepting an options object and returning a promise that resolves with the upload response. Let's for now firstly implement file uploads, and then I will explain exactly how everything works together. So if you scroll a bit to the bottom, you will find like a little quick start guide. The first step is to create a route handler, and the second step is to create your client component. So let's start with the route handler. So I can just copy the route structure, and I will copy the code and then paste it into this newly generated route handler. And for this route handler to work, you need two environment variables, the ImageKit private key and the ImageKit public key. This means let's go back to the dashboard. Then in the sidebar, we can scroll to the bottom, we can click on developer settings or options, and we want to get the public key and private key. I will copy the public key and I can paste it into my env file. So here, ImageKit public key, and I want to get the private key. Now it's very important that the private key always stays on the server side, never leak it to the client side, but in this case the route handler is on the server side, which means everything is fine. As a next step, we can implement the client side code to call the API route to retrieve the upload parameters. So I will copy this code, I created an uploader component, and I will paste it inside of here. Then in my page.tsx I import the uploader component, and it's also very important that the uploader component is a client component, because we for example use the useState hook or for example the useRef hook. And if we go back, then you will see that this is our file upload component, this one specifically, and I can choose a file, This is just a subscribe button. I can click on upload file and it seems like the image upload was successful. If I go to the ImageKit dashboard, I can click on media library and as you see here, we have a new image. Subscribe. Wow, let's upload another file, this one. I will click on open and upload file. As you see here, it was successful and if I do a hard refresh in the dashboard, I get my image here. But how does this really work? Well, again, the documentation is your best friend. In this example, we first of all have our client-side uploader component. This client-side uploader component makes a request to our route handler, which we generated a few seconds ago. And we call this API route to fetch the authentication parameters. In the route handler itself, we use the getUploadAuthParams function to get our token, expire, and signature properties. As the next step, we then upload our file, because once the client has the auth parameters, which are returned from the route handler, we upload the file using this upload function. So as you see here, we invoke it and then we pass a few arguments. The expire property, the token, signature, public key, file name, and then we have this onProgress callback function which returns the progress state. And the nice thing is we did not have to implement any XHR, which you would do normally to get the progress. Everything is done for us. We have to write this simple code, just the route handler, and then this client-side code which fetches the auth params and then uploads everything using the upload function, and that's already it. There is a bit of basic error handling already implemented, and I created a lot of videos on file uploads with, for example, S3, and trust me, it's way harder than this, because there are way more steps that you have to implement. And here's the important thing that a lot of people forget. ImageKit is not some sort of standard image hosting, video hosting provider. No, if you want to, you can connect ImageKit to your own storage solution. As they say here, zero vendor lock-in. You can keep your assets in S3, GCS, Azure, whatever you want. You can upload everything using ImageKit. You can use ImageKit to optimize everything, to transform everything. But if you want to have your own storage solution, well, then you can easily connect it to ImageKit, which means you have zero vendor lock-in, but at the same time, you have optimization, transformations, and you can use ImageKit not only for images, but also for videos. Alright, so we are now finally finished with this video. You now know how to optimize your media in Next.js using the standard image tag, using the image component, using the image component provided by ImageKit, using ImageKit itself to transform your media, to store your media, and to deliver your media easily on a CDN. Thank you ImageKit for making this video possible. Try out ImageKit using the link in my YouTube description. As mentioned, they have a generous forever free tier which I use for my production websites. Yes, you heard right. And now enjoy your day and I hope that I can see you in the next one. Over and out. Bye bye.